Good morning. You're listening to Drinking Socially, the official Untappd podcast.
Your inside look into what's happening in the Untappd community and the world of beer.
I'm John, and Valentine's Day has always been tough for me, but usually beer helps, or I don't want to say that beer is a Valentine's coping mechanism,
Right.
but you know,
Maybe it is.
It's the best Valentine you'll ever get. Now, let's just say it that way. It's also February, which is kind of a movement recently in the beer world known as Flagship February, which Harrison's probably going to talk about here in a few. But I'm really excited about this episode. We're drinking two flagship beers. One of them is an old favorite of mine. The other one I've never had. Both of them have Russian roots, and that's why this episode is titled From Russia with Love.
And I'm Harrison, and I'm excited to revisit some classic styles today. A lot of history, which we'll get into, but also more recently really become kind of a medium for some serious innovation when it comes to adjuncts and adding cool stuff to these kind of base beers, if you will, to take them to fun, new, exciting places. So we'll kind of talk a little about that as well. And these are pretty boozy beers we'll be jumping on today, so I'm going to apologize in advance if I'm sneaking some chocolates in the background. I'm sure you'll kind of understand the reasoning behind that, as it's a pretty classic pairing. But before we get all that fun stuff, as a reminder, Drinking Socially is released every other Wednesday morning. It can be found at podcast.untappd.com.
Or wherever you listen to podcasts.
All right.
Getting started, Harrison, I know I had the pleasure of drinking a beer with you this past weekend.
It happened.
And we threw axes together.
Yep, axes at a wall in a legal place where you could do that. And yeah, we both enjoyed the Oney from Oscar Blues, which is their kind of newer 4% hazy pale session IPA, I guess. And I liked it a lot. It went down in about 2 gulps.
It had all the flavor I wanted in New England IPA, but I could have drank 7 of them, which was really impressive. I called it Onesie.
Right.
And I'm realizing now I don't know what the name is, but Onesie just sounded more comfortable.
Yeah, it's great. Kind of warms you like a onesie would. Their footy is the counterpart that's yet to be named or made or whatever. But
Imperial version.
Like, right, a bigger, right, that sure, for whatever reason, also warms your feet. That'd be a lot of booze to get my feet warm. That may happen today, though. Yes, and then so complete departure from that, also managed to get my hands on some Hop Slam, which is, of course, from Bell's, their seasonal double, triple IPA. I don't know what they're actually calling it now.
Double, although, I mean, I guess it could be a triple.
Right,
10%, right?
Yeah, so it's a monster. I thought it was great this year. I thought it was more bitter in years past, more bitter this year than it was in other years. And I like it with some heat from the booze, heat from the hops, the honey comes through. It's really a cool beer. I wish I could enjoy more than one of them each time I have it, but alas.
I got a story we almost touched on when Mike from Session Beer was here.
Right.
And he had come across a 5-liter mini keg of Hop Slam.
Ooh,
and we tried to drink it. It was 3 or 4 of us that night that tried to get through that. That was my introduction and departure from Hop Slam.
Yeah.
Now I only drink it in a pint.
It's a beast.
It is. I think Hop Slam days before New England was... It was almost the same beer as it is today, but New England has made Hop Slam kind of a rarity in the IPA world. Right. And I've seen people that kind of, it's less exciting, it's more available, but it's a great beer. And I think there's benefit to trying something different, and Hop Slam will give you that. The bitterness was great this year, I agree.
You're right, but it is kind of more of a juxtaposition than ever, a big hoppy beer in a world of very juicy hop, flavorful beers that don't have as much punch. So yeah, I loved it. I enjoyed the heck out of it. Pumped its back. It looks like some more just came into town. I was seeing some posts from some local bottle shops, got another drop of it. So it's always great to get kind of as much as you can while it's here, because it really only lasts like maybe a month and then it's gone again. So we're enjoying it.
I know we were talking about Nugget Nectar. I actually thought I was going to get some, missed it. I ended up having a bottle of Java Head Stout from Trogs, which is kind of in the vein of what we'll be drinking today. But that was appealing. I'm still on the hunt for some Nugget Nectar. Did you happen to get any?
I do happen to have some of it that was brought to me by my father-in-law, actually. So pumped, a great gift. He's a big IPA head as well, so brought some down from good old PA, and I'm enjoying it. So yeah, I haven't seen it anywhere else near us, but yeah, pumped to get my hands on some. It is my favorite seasonal. So this is a great kind of month usually where Hop Slam and Duck Nectar kind of come out hand in hand, and you're just trying to keep up, trying not to burn your taste buds out, among other things. So it's a great time of year for sure.
So speaking of February being an awesome month for seasonals, we made quick mention of Flagship February, which was kind of I'm going to call it a movement that was started by beer writer Stephen Beaumont.
Right.
I don't know, maybe only 2 years ago. I could be totally wrong.
Yeah, it's not been around for very long, but it's a great idea of just kind of taking a month to reflect back on kind of as we are constantly flying forward in time, kind of where we as craft beer fans kind of where it all began. So he's been doing a really cool job online. Steven has of just kind of cataloging basically what he's having. I think almost every day he's taken the time to write a post about a beer that's been around for some time. And one of them we have today is a beer. Someone just wrote about it under I mentioned it in Flagship February, someone else, another beer writer. So I wonder if Steven will probably get to it soon. I'm sure he will. But yeah, it's cool just to kind of take a moment, take a pause, and kind of pay tribute to the greats, the ones who came before, that are still making great beer, which we talk about them all the time. And actually, we'll talk about this a little bit later, but a lot of those beers even popped up over the Super Bowl football weekend, which is pretty cool. So I mean, even before, well, I guess that totally was February, but yeah, great stuff. Just kind of switch it up a little bit. But yeah, it hasn't been around long, but I'm all for it. It's kind of like the beers I go to anyway. So now this month I feel like a normal person.
I totally agree. I think there's a few writers that are kind of partaking. If you go to their .com, or we'll link to Steven's Twitter in the show notes, but the idea that I've seen a lot of bars get behind is they'll pull like Sierra Nevada Pale Ale or New Belgium Fat Tire, and it'll be on tap the entire month of February. Sometimes they'll do like $5 pints, and definitely we saw people going to London Pride and Gaffel Kolsch after the last episode and sharing their experience with those beers. It's as exciting as new beer is. Yeah. Trust me, I love it. But it's also really nice to take a minute and just kind of go back and set a reference point with some of the beers that paved the way. Yeah,
I think remembering last year's Flagship February, I believe I'm right in saying that Sierra Nevada put their draft pale ale, which is like a taproom only available version of their Sierra Nevada Pale Ale that's a little bit lower in ABV, on tap that month with like the original tab handle, and they served it at like the price it was at in 1985 as well, or something. Cool. So totally jumping back in time, which again, that stuff's great. That's really cool. So if you haven't done it yet, you'll get a chance to find a beer today that we're going to drink, and also grab another level up in the badge, Drinking Socially badge, too. That's also a Flagship beer, but there's tons of them out there. So jump onto their website, check it out, follow Steven online, and kind of if you have some time and want to take a trip back in time, now's a cool time to do it.
Getting to the first beer of this episode. This one's going to be challenging for those of you that are trying to level up the badge.
Right. It's okay.
It was really challenging to get my hands on it.
Right.
It's pretty predominant in Moscow.
Mm-hmm.
You may find it in St. Petersburg. It's been at some beer festivals in Iceland, Finland. Mm-hmm. I think I've seen it get checked in at some festivals in Norway.
Okay.
A few of my Untappd friends, even here in the States, have checked in this beer. But not many. The one we're going to be drinking first comes from Victory Art Brewing in Moscow, Russia. This, I believe, is their flagship beer. It's the one that they have the most check-ins on Untappd. It is Ivan, the Imperial Stout, and from Russia. I'm going to just assume this is also a Russian Imperial Stout.
I think by default it is.
Harrison's going to fill us in on the difference or subtle differences between them. But while I crack this open, Harrison, do you mind giving us a rundown on the specs of this monster?
Yep, exactly right. So, Victory Art Brew, yep, from Russia indeed. It's classified as a Russian Imperial Stout. It's 13% ABV, which is pretty impressive, and almost even more. There we go. More startling or more exciting, I guess. It has listed as having 100 IBUs. So
100?
100 IBUs.
Holy cow.
So look out. But really, reading about this beer, I'm so pumped to drink because you read on Victory Art Brew's website, they break it down, of course, talk about it a lot, but seems to have just a ton of specialty malts in it, which most Imperial Stouts do. But really highlighting whiskey malt, which is also referred to as peated malt, which is usually like a distiller's malt, but you can brew with it as well, or it's like a 6-row barley that's smoked on some peat as it's being malted. So that can lend a cool smoky note to it, but also like Belgian brown malt and all kinds of flavors. They're saying it's going to be pretty viscous, got some coffee aromas, even says it's going to smell like fuel oil and creosote, which is exciting. So coming from the brewery itself, but makes note to say the high alcohol is really masked by the complex aromas of the beer. So, again, this is going to be wild to have a Russian Imperial Stout from Russia. I'm pumped to do it.
The nose on this beer, as soon as I've started pouring it, is
I get it.
I'm kind of recovering from a sickness right now. If my voice sounds weird, this will be what allows you to breathe again. This is like the Russian Robitussin.
Right, it'll get you right back up.
It's the first thing I've smelt in days.
Right, both feet back on the merry-go-round for sure. Wow.
Okay. It smells angry. 100 IBUs.
100 IBUs, right, which is not uncommon for it's a little higher, but the next beer we're going to have is like 75 IBUs. It's also Russian Imperial, so they can handle it.
Most of the time when I look at high IBUs, I go right back to Victory Dirt Wolf and IPAs. Mm-hmm. Do you get 100 IBUs into a stout the same way you would with an IPA?
Yeah, just dumping a bunch of hops in there. But obviously the specialty malts, it's not gonna show up the same way. You're also probably not doing as many late edition hops. The flavor actually of the hop will really probably be mostly just bitterness and then blend right into all the other specialty malts that can lend other kinds of bitterness to it, whether it's smoked malts, tannins from the darker malts can kind of get into these beers, or tannin-like flavors, which can also lend some bitterness. Coffee flavors, which is often perceived as bitter. So, yeah, but it's the same measurement as you would in an IPA, but those beers obviously have less specialty malts and can be overall lighter, even if they're as alcoholic, although hard to find as many 30% IPAs out there these days. But so there's a lot different approach, of course, and different result. But I'm excited to get in here and drink something from Russia, a beer from Russia.
We're starting off. Hopefully we see some badge urns in Moscow.
Right.
This is the most applicable Nostrovia I'll ever hand out.
Right. There we go. Nostrovia. Let's do it, John.
Cheers.
Whew. Holy cowabunga. Man.
There's some waffles in that sucker.
That is extremely bitter. Wow.
Not in an aggressive way that I was kind of building myself up for. It reminds me of like cocoa powder bitter.
Right.
Dark
exactly
chocolate.
it. Like a baker's chocolate. Yeah. It's very grabs the back of your tongue.
Your grandmother said, have some of this chocolate.
Right.
And you never wanted to touch it again.
I don't understand. What is it? The candy bars taste great, but the powdered form is horrible. Sugar's the difference. But wow.
I think they laid claim, it was on their website, to this hiding the 13% ABV well.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go ahead and agree with that.
Yeah.
This is one of the biggest beers we've had on the show.
Easily, yeah. Right. Next to Black Tuesday, I think it is. And wow. I'm very excited to see how this warms up. But you get right away, it's like smoked, you're right next to a charcoal grill. Man, I get just a ton of bitter smoke. The nose is more just kind of coffee toffee, but man, when you drink it, I cannot believe how bitter it is. But this would be, so also, why would these beers be so bitter? That's kind of the whole entire point, and we'll probably talk about this a little bit more as we move through the podcast today. But hops are a preservative. That's the whole point of this beer, and why it exists is that the first time a brewery from England sent it to Russia, it spoiled on the trip because it wasn't alcoholic enough, didn't have enough hops in it, so they made a bigger version of it. And yeah, I mean, so this is probably, I wonder, man, this makes you think about, again, if only we had a time capsule. But there's a reason it's so hopped as it is. It's a beer is designed to last a really long time in bottles for many, many, many years, and hops will help preserve all the other flavors going on in here. This one, can we get a bottled on date or even something like this? Has got to be pretty fresh.
I can tell you this was imported by the Shelton brothers, who import most of our foreign beers here into the States, and I love trying to make sense of the dates on beers. This one, to the best of my knowledge, reads 10/12/2018.
Really?
Which is, I'm going to assume, a bottled on date as opposed to a Best By. I can't read most of this bottle. I can identify a percent sign next to 13. They give what's probably some Plato and IBU numbers. Most of the label is in Russian, except for a paper sticker that's put over there by the Shelton brothers so they could bring it to the U.S. And it's got this beautiful kind of artwork of a warplane, right? And the top of the label, it's like, it reminds me of like those matrix printers where all the paper was connected together.
There you go.
The top of the label looks really, really cool. It's a beautiful label. But this was originally, I would have to assume, made for consumption and sale in Moscow. So we just happened to get lucky to get a bottle of it over here.
Very lucky. Wow. I'm just amazed at how big it is. It's so dry, too.
The Untappd notes are just a link to their YouTube channel where they talk about this beer, which I think is beautiful. On their website, they give a little bit of a description. That's where Harrison was able to find some of the malts they use and make mention that this is great for a long, cold winter evening, which is not where I am right now today. It's almost 70 degrees out, but it makes me wish this beer is like a February camping trip in the mountains that just so happened to get poured out of a bottle here.
I mean, it's, again, kind of like that lager I had a couple weeks ago that we talked about that was a smoked lager. This is like a great campfire beer. I agree. It would just go perfectly with the smoke in the air and all that stuff.
You could probably convince me this was like a Rausch beer or something if I didn't know anything ahead of time.
Same exact malts in it, just more of them, more of the smoked malts for sure. You know what? Now that's warming up a little bit. This is nice. I definitely got like a almost. I don't want to say smoke can have like a phenolic character too, and it's a little bit of that, like some phenols coming off this thing when I'm drinking it as well, in a enjoyable way though. But it's like really smoke for me. I'm getting just like smoke forward everything. And the coffee comes in a little bit at the end. But wow, man, what like a big, powerful beer. This is great. And, as it says, goes really well with chocolates. That's probably a good idea, John.
Let's find out how it goes with
some dark chocolate, some dark nondescript chocolate.
Regular old chocolate. And like many things, it goes better with food. I'm talking about baseball games, new cars, sunny days, cold days. Everything goes better with the right food. Beer included. Oftentimes, I think beer, alcohol will help kind of reset your palate so that you can go back to that filet or that cheese dip, in my case, and kind of taste it again for the first time. I think this beer would go amazing with like a heavy mushroom gravy on top of a grass-fed, real like beautiful cut of beef. You could also, if you wanted to, you could easily put a bunch of seasoning on cauliflower, cabbage, roast it up like a steak.
Right.
But go heavy with your flavor because this beer is coming out swinging.
Yeah. Or maybe just like one of those ice cream floats I did that once with an Imperial Stout. I don't remember which one long ago. Just put a bunch of vanilla ice cream in it and drank it, and it was great. So be cool with that. Vanilla ice cream just kind of adds some creaminess to it, but not take away from the flavor at all. Okay, so now the chocolate's in. It definitely helps reset. Ooh, and it's pulling out more of like the, I actually got like a really grassy kind of hop note there. That's what jumped out then, is the chocolate's kind of distracting some of my taste buds. I guess the ones that were occupied with all the smoke flavor before. And also it's obviously warming up in our hand as we're sitting here enjoying it. But
totally agree.
Something else jumps out.
After covering my palate with chocolate, the beer almost tasted lighter to me.
Tasted lighter.
I didn't get most of the heavy, dark chocolate smoky notes. They were already, it was muted by the mouthful of chocolate.
Right. But absolutely right. As you said earlier, John, like I wouldn't be able to tell you the alcohol in this. If you gave it to me, I'd just guess that it was high, but I would never probably guess this high. It definitely, you're just focusing on the kind of smoky, chocolatey coffee stuff that's happening. As it kind of sneaks up on you. This is great.
Honestly, this is the first beer I've had that was bottled and produced in Moscow. Yep. And if the rest of them are almost this good.
Right. Quite an introduction.
There's definitely, if you look on Untappd, you'll see that Moscow seems to be kind of the home of some of the upcoming breweries. Zagavor in Russia, but St. Petersburg, AF Brewing.
Yes.
Sabotage, I don't know where they're from, but there are definitely, there are some craft forward breweries appearing in Moscow, St. Petersburg, and Russia as a whole. It's a really cool scene out there.
Yes, it is.
If you happen to live there, you probably already know. If you're looking for a place to visit, though, swing by Moscow and grab a good stop at Victory Art.
Right. It looks like the Victory Art itself does get out of Russia a little bit to other parts of Europe. I'm seeing some Gothenburg and Stockholm check-ins and a few other spots, although it does primarily look like we're in Russia with this guy. But yeah, if you get your hands on it, it's definitely a trip. I mean, this is pretty wild, just how big and just like unapologetically smoky madness. Which again, they own in that description on their website is this is a smoked malt in here, and you're going to taste it, which you absolutely do. This is cool as heck. And let's see. So overall, 114,000 different check-ins. 21,000 unique. Interesting, just kind of a lot of people revisiting. This is for Victory Art overall. Let's jump into Ivan itself. So they have 10,000 check-ins of Ivan, 10,800 or so, 7,000 unique, 83 this month. Most recently, there we go, in Moscow itself. About 4 hours ago as we're making this podcast.
Coming from Oleg in Russia, with his check-in, I've been drinking for a long time, so I took a picture. Good on you, Oleg. As we learned in the Year in Beer, most Russian Untappd users give us something to aspire to.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. The Observer, that's his name in Untappd, he had this, let me see, yesterday, and his notes on the check-in say, aroma of resin smoked notes, which I would agree with, a little dark chocolate, and yeast, tight in the taste of smoked burnt malt, strong bitterness. So I'm right there with you, Mr. Observer. But definitely, the resiny, that's a good way to characterize it too.
Yeah, some of the reviews on this beer, if you translate them, if you're on Untappd on the web, you can just translate them. Yeah. Some of the reviews are great, like really, really accurate tasting notes and descriptions. This beer itself, Ivan, holds just over 4 caps rating, over 10,000 check-ins.
Impressive.
13% 100 IBUs, 7,000 ratings, and over 4 stars. That means you're doing something exceptionally well. To kind of transition from there into some other things that have been exceptionally well received, the Super Bowl just happened,
right?
And Untappd launched its Brew Bowl badge to kind of coincide. If you check in on the day of the Super Bowl, you'll earn that badge. It is sometimes difficult for our friends overseas because by the time the game is happening for you, it's the next day. So we do it as a 24-hour badge, check in a little early, tailgate. It was something around, I think, 70% of our badge unlocks happen before the game.
Yeah.
Because you check in a beer while you're cooking chicken wings or roast cauliflower before the game. You get the badge then, the game unfolds. What was really cool to see the top 3 breweries that people use to unlock that badge, the top 3 breweries we were drinking during the big game. Any guesses, Harrison?
I mean, I imagine my go-to was always Sierra Nevada's Pale Ale, and I'm sure a lot of other people felt the same way. But probably Sierra Nevada, and I don't know who else. You tell me.
You nailed it with Sierra Nevada. I think Bell's actually took first place with the most check-ins, and then New Belgium right behind them. But that's really cool to see. For the Super Bowl being 3 craft brewers that people unlock the badge with the most.
Yeah. And I'm sure Hop Slam helped with that as well. That's been like the number 1 trending beer on Untappd globally for almost the day it came out. So that's a heck of a Super Bowl or a 5-hour-long football game to be drinking Hop Slam. You're a brave, brave person. I hope you had a lot of chicken wings and dip to make you last all 4 quarters there. But yeah, that's cool as heck to see. Solid game this year. In addition to that, we have some other cool news about Untappd and more fun live events. You can enjoy this amazing community we have in person with other like-minded Untappd users. John, what do we have in the pipeline?
We made a public announcement. The Untappd Festival is going to be relaunching this year, again in Charlotte at the stadium. May 16th is the day of the event. There's going to be 2 sessions this year, so you can come earlier, you can come later.
Yes.
Tickets are on sale. We'll put a link in the show notes. But one thing Harrison and I are kind of looking forward to in the Drinking Socially group, we're going to try and organize a time for anybody that listens to the podcast. If you show up, we'll all kind of meet beside one brewer's tent, and we'll all kind of check in a beer together. So if you're planning on going to the event, join the Facebook group, and we'll post an announcement the day before the festival, so we can all just plan on literally having a beer together, which will be a whole lot of fun. If you're able to make it to the event in Charlotte, it'd be great to see some of you.
I agree. That'd be a blast. I'm looking forward to it. It's gonna be fun. I'll wear a cool hat.
I would expect a cool hat and likely a very cool shirt from Harrison, something from the National Lampoon's archives.
All I have.
Other badge updates. If you're listening to this show in about a week from when it comes out, there's going to be a Mardi Gras badge on Untappd that'll run through Fat Tuesday.
Delicious.
So check in a beer if you're fortunate enough. Check in a beer from Parish or
have some pancakes.
One of the great Louisiana breweries, right? Beignets and beers. But that badge will be available for anyone checking in during the time period. And some updates on the Drinking Socially badge. It looks like there's going to be an upset, but right now Atlanta is still the top city.
Strong by 5, right?
London is about 5 unlocks behind Atlanta right now.
Love it.
As you may have guessed, London Pride became the top beer for people earning that badge, just barely edged out Tropicalia. However, chicken and beer in the Atlanta airport, still the number 1 destination.
Boom.
Brewery West out in Los Angeles actually almost edged out chicken and beer. It looks like they did an event there a couple of weeks ago that a lot of people were. I saw a lot of Tropicalia check-ins there. All in all, it was great. Some of the people in the Facebook group, or even just on Untappd in general, seeing people go back to Gaffel Kolsch or London Pride, or just looking for a Tropicalia or a Speed Merchant, earning the badge or trying to level it up. It's been really fun.
Oh yeah!
If you're going to Moscow soon, look for Ivan. If you're bound to the U.S., hopefully the next beer Harrison and I crack open will make it a little bit easier for everyone.
I think it'll be be able to find this next guy everywhere. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun just watching all the check-ins happen and where they're coming from, really all over the world. We've had people check in from, obviously, after Gaffel Kolsch Cologne, And Germany jumped on the list quickly. I think they're number 3 city right now, which is really cool. Just
Cologne, Germany?
Right,
nice.
just from just one beer we had there. And then, just some more kind of really just all over the place. I even saw some check-ins from, where did I see? I saw one that was pretty cool. It disappeared somewhere in, I think, Thailand or something. Somebody grabbed a beer. So you're seeing people find these things all over, which is kind of testament to how craft beer and beer itself is, can't go too far without finding something cool these days. Which what a time to be alive.
We're going to take a quick break to hear from our sponsor, who hopefully you all know and love, Untappd.
Right.
We'll be right back to open up the next beer for this episode and catch up on some news and talk about the Russian Imperial Stout.
That's right. History, everyone's favorite thing. Coming up.
Want to show off your love of Untappd? Check out our online store and pick up Untappd branded glassware, shirts, sweatshirts, hats, more. Depending on how hot or cold you are, go to store.untappd.com and enter the coupon code podcast when you check out. That'll get 20% off anything you order. That's store.untappd.com. Use the coupon code podcast, 20% off for you. Plus, it lets them know that you guys are listening, and we love that here.
All right. Perfect. So we're back, and we are pumped to drink another classic. John, what are we looking at? What's next on the agenda?
I've been excited to bring this beer on the podcast since we started hosting the podcast.
Yes.
I view this beer as memory's a poor record keeper, which is why I use Untappd. I think this is the first Russian and big stout I remember having. It's probably incorrect, but Old Rasputin from North Coast out in California.
Yes.
Harrison's going to run us through the stats while I put it into cups.
Yep.
But this beer's acclaimed. It's won a bunch of awards. It's
indeed.
This is a great American example of a Russian Imperial.
That's right. Exactly right. Yeah. So Old Rasputin, I hope you've had it. If not, it is very readily available, not just in the States. We're through check-ins in Tokyo and all over Europe. So, it's you should hopefully are close to some, but 9% ABV, 75 IBUs, so same deal. Really not pulling any punches on the IBU front here either when it comes to that side of the beer. And from the brewery itself, the notes are produced in the tradition of the 18th century English brewers who supplied the court of Russia's Catherine the Great. More on that in a moment. Old Rasputin seems to develop a cult following wherever it goes. A rich, intense brew with big, complex flavors and warming finish. So this beer is really well known as being like a nitro beer, like on nitro. If you have it on tap somewhere, it's probably nitrogenated, which lends it even more kind of velvety, silky smoothness to it. Today we're having it out of a 22-ounce bomber bottle, so non-nitrogenated, just regular old CO2 or probably some kind of beer gas mixture. This is kind of when I think about, if someone says Russian Imperial Stout, this beer pops in my head. This is the one that just without even thinking, I can't make it not show up there. Again, I like what John said too. I mean, ever since we started the podcast, looking for a reason to bring this guy on, and here we are today. We're going to do it, and it's won 15 gold medals.
Holy cow!
Starting back in 1996 at the World Beer Cup, which, as many of you I'm sure know, is kind of like the Olympics for breweries. Only held every other year and open, of course, as the name suggests, to the world. So, not messing around. An interesting little tidbit about it is there is a writing in Cyrillic, a phrase on the logo under the picture of Rasputin himself that translates in English to "a sincere friend is not born instantly." So take that and chew on it. Pretty classic stuff. I'm pumped to jump into it. Already looking at the head, way different. This one's pretty puffy. It's tan, but leans more white, where Ivan kind of leaned a little more brown, but let's jump in on this guy.
It's a bomber, so I'm just going to put a little bit more into Harrison's cup.
Top yourself off or me off. This one was mine.
That's one happy tulip for you, my friend.
Thank you, sir. Wow. Oh, man.
Remember when Bombers were all the good beer?
I do. That's right.
I don't know how I made it through a bunch of 22-ounce, 9, 10, 13 percenters, but I'm grateful we see more beer in cans now. Its nose is a little bit more mellow, right? It's not coming out yelling at me.
Nope, not at all. It's kind of like, someone's brewing coffee in the room next to you. That's what I get. But when you drink it, I mean, it is smooth is not a flavor, but it is a descriptor in terms of mouthfeel, and I'm going to jump all over that and lead with smooth. But this, to me, it's more caramel. There's toffee happening. There's a little bit of coffee going on right away. I mean, interesting having this after a 100 IBU Russian Imperial Stout, as we just did. But I still get like a little bit of that bitterness that kind of lingers there for a moment. But it's definitely coffee, toffee, caramel jumping around right out of the bottle, right out of the gate.
You mentioned that this is often poured on nitro, which for me makes the best beer in the world.
Right.
I would maybe this is bottled with more of a nitrogenated gas. I'm making this up and I'm questioning it as I say it.
Beer gas is a mixture of CO2 and nitrogen and a couple other gases, but it's usually just CO2. I mean, it doesn't look like it at all. It's not doing anything in the glass that would lead me to believe it's anything other than regular CO2. And I'm almost positive they bottle this guy with CO2 itself. It's not bottle conditioned or anything like that either. But yeah, nitro is a different experience. Nitro tap for sure.
If Ivan is the quintessential angry example of a Russian Imperial Stout, then Old Rasputin is the quintessential example of a California chilled out.
Right.
Like I left Russia a long time ago.
It's in the past.
I hike now and I surf often. This beer strikes me as infinitely more crushable, drinkable. Sure, it's 4% less ABV.
Right.
It's less angry. Is how I would phrase it.
Yeah, even though it's named after a man who was killed 3 or 4 times, depending on what records you read and what you believe. But yeah, no, definitely. I mean, again, it's very, and this is not a negative thing, but it's very approachable. It's a very straightforward beer. There's plenty going on in here. It is a complex beer, but when you talk about Russian Imperial Stouts today, it's almost like you say, I'm having Russian Imperial Stout, and then the person you're with will say, awesome, what's in it? And what they're looking for is there coffee? Is there marshmallows? Is there chocolate, bourbon? Like what else is going on with that beer? And that's great. We talk a lot about IPAs on this podcast, and rightfully so. They're all over the place, but we're also really living in the time of pastry stouts and bourbon barrel-aged stouts and all kinds of crazy stuff happening with this medium too. So as we said in the beginning, exciting we're doing this during flagship that we're going to take a step back and realize kind of the canvas this beer is and can become. It's great by itself, but you could also see as a brewer drinking this or a beer like this and thinking like, I wonder how I could bring out more of the coffee. Maybe I'll add coffee to it. I wonder. And they have variants of this. They have a rye bourbon barrel aged version of it. It's just a bourbon barrel aged version. So they've done that themselves. They've kind of taken this beer and seen where it can go. But it's definitely, again, it's complex. It's approachable, and really just refreshing in that it's not crazy. It's not like a crazy stuff going on here. It is exactly what it's supposed to be to style. And this is, again, what I think of when I think of Russian Imperial Stouts.
It's a great example of a flagship. This is a Russian Imperial Stout, unimpeded, unfussed with. Mm-hmm. If you look on Untappd, the top-rated Russian Imperial Stouts are largely Dark Lord in the beginning.
Right.
Most of them are marshmallow or vanilla variants of Dark Lord. You got to scroll down a little while before you get to Surly's Darkness, which is a delicious beer. Yeah. And then as soon as you scroll past Surly's Darkness, you get to Vietnamese Speedway Stout and more variants on Dark Lord. And I think there's one from Voodoo, but Definitely. Marshmallows are delicious. Vanilla is really good. If you mix those two together, it's probably going to, exemplify and be even better. A peanut butter sandwich isn't as good as a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I would say that.
What about a marshmallow fluff peanut butter jelly banana sandwich? Right. That's a great point. The peanut butter and jelly, even the peanut butter and jelly sandwich is a great canvas to build upon. I guess we've been doing this, all of us, since we've been infants, is taking something that is great and going, I can put more into this.
Yeah.
What do we have laying around?
How do I add more without making it work? Oh, ham and peanut butter was a fail.
I'm glad we tried it though, but now we know.
But I think this would be, we were actually just talking with someone who listens to the podcast on Untappd, asking about the French press episode. Yeah. Sent us a message, and I think this would be a great beer to use in your own infusions. It's a baseline in the beer judging certification program. Right. This is a great example of the style. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Yeah. Every brewer out there knows this beer. Every beer judge knows it. If you haven't had it, you really should, because this is, again, we said it a couple of different ways, but this, like, without a beer like this, and really probably this exact beer for a lot of American brewers, we would not be living in the world of. Yeah, you're right. That whole entire first page of Russian Imperial Stouts on Untappd is just crazy with all kinds of adjuncts in them. We would not have all this really cool experimentation happening with beers like this. So that's pretty cool. And I think, again, what Flagship February is all about is just, where have we come from? How do we get here?
This beer has been checked in almost 400,000 times, 394,000. It's been rated almost 240,000 times. It's almost the same exact rating as Ivan of 4.02.
Yeah, I think it is, yeah.
So again, I think this is a great example to show that you can make a beer true to style without doing anything to it. Make it well. Obviously, in this example, 15 gold medals from Stockholm to GABF.
Yep.
Make it well, and people appreciate that, as I am right now.
And keep coming back to it.
While we're referencing so much this Russian Imperial, I think a lot of people, you might have seen it on the shelf before. Where's a Russian Imperial different than an Imperial Stout, Harrison? Can you help us out with that?
Sure. So they really all come. So to answer that, we'll take a trip back to 1698 England. Everyone, imagine yourself there now. All right, good.
I'm dead. I have diabetes.
So when Peter the Great, who was the Tsar of Russia, was visiting England and really took a liking to the kind of porters that a lot of people were drinking there, and wanted some sent back to his imperial court in Russia. So they did that, and the beer spoiled on the trip, and they were embarrassed, the English breweries that made it. So they determined to kind of save face, and the Barclay Brewery in London just jacked up the amount of alcohol and hops in it for the next batch they sent over there, and this resulted in like a really dark, black, inky beer that is really, again, more complex and became known as the Russian Imperial Stout, obviously referencing the imperial court it was sent to, Russia, all that cool stuff that that's kind of obvious in the story I'm telling right now. But the really cool part about this is that, really you talk about Russian Imperial Stouts. I think now, this wasn't always the case. The BJCP that I really look to track all this stuff, it really just sees the category as an imperial stout. It's almost been interchangeable, and you can drop off the Russian, because this beer was invented, like this kind of alcoholic, boozy, big stout was invented as the Russian Imperial Stout. That was the first version of it. So, but the American versions have like more hop character, English more malty. That's kind of the same with like an American or English barley wine, American English IPAs. So there's a theme there across other styles of beer, but that'd be the biggest difference. But I just think that it's such a cool, similar to the IPA story of, again, using hops to make a beer last longer for a trip or to get to wherever it needs to go. That's why this beer exists, just kind of out of necessity, and it birthed this amazing style that really kind of died out though until a lot of American and U.S. craft breweries brought it back towards the end of the 20th century, and Old Rasputin being one of them. Again, 1996 being the first time they won an award for it. So been around for a while, and then Catherine the Great after Peter the Great really dug on this too, and there are plenty of stories kind of about her. But it became a big deal in Russia. Everyone loved it, and rightfully so. Get kind of cold there, and this will warm you up.
So the need was a visiting dignitary fell in love with a beer style and said, "I want this back at my house." Exactly, and Amazon Prime didn't exist yet.
Not yet.
So England came up with a way to deliver that by giving us a higher ABV stout.
Exactly right. Nailed it. Yep.
And eventually that fell out of favor until a bunch of Americans said, we want to try our hand at that.
Find me some goofy stuff that I can make that no one's made in a while.
What else?
All right. What
else can we start doing?
Right.
But I think it's a beautiful style, and now we've kind of created from that the pastry stout.
Indeed. Sure. And the milk stout and like all these others, so many variations of this. Oatmeal stouts, imperial oatmeal stouts. Like there's obviously a lot there. I would argue as much or if not more than IPAs in order to do with it, variations of it. You can take this and go a bunch of different ways, this exact beer.
It's such an easy canvas to apply flavor to. If you put raspberry chocolate into a stout, it's already magnificent. Right. If you put raspberry chocolate into an IPA, I feel like it's a different game. I'm still going to buy both of them, but
check it out.
Exactly,
both exist, so you can buy both. They're both out there. But yeah, this is again cool to just kind of revisit. I mean, it was funny I had to go to 2 different bottle shops to find just any Russian Imperial Stout that had no adjuncts. It was difficult to find. So if you're lucky enough to find this guy, grab it and enjoy it. Take a step back.
And you said they won their first gold medal with this beer in 1996.
96, exactly right.
I am older by my own definition, but in 1996,
good year,
I was not winning gold medals.
No.
I was arguing with high school teachers about what being late really meant.
Right. That was the year Scream came out, From Dusk Till Dawn, The Craft, Independence Day. What a great year. Twister.
A great year for movies.
Great year. Oh, man.
Another bit of news that I'll give credit to Becca, who does a little bit of research for us here at Untappd.
Yes.
There's a Facebook group of people in the Netherlands called the Beer Geeks, who I already love. And they kind of banded together this group to kind of beat ALS. And there's a beer made by Jopen in the Netherlands with about 50 collaborators. We're going to link to the beer in the show notes. It's called Road to Nowhere. But the goal was they lost a member of their Facebook group to ALS, and all these brewers collaborated on this beer and ultimately raised about 100,000 euros to fight ALS. And I think that's kind of one of the things I find most appealing about craft beer is that we mentioned this early on in season 2, it's a community as much as it is a hobby or something to do while your football team is playing.
Right. And
that was a great example of how a bunch of breweries collaborated, and you can still find the beer in the Netherlands. We'll link to it on Untappd. But bravo to you guys and the Beer Geeks Facebook group. That's an awesome thing you did to kind of turn that into something positive.
Yep, amazing stuff. Real cool. Check it out.
Other notes we've got to kind of settle for season 3, episode 4 is Would You Rather?
Yes, today is a good one.
This one, I'm going to give credit to Harrison. He pretty much made this one up on the spot. As we often do with our would you rathers, the difficulty is coming up with a would you rather that's complicated but easy to explain.
Right. That's the most difficult part. And then also answering it.
Answering it is an entirely different level of difficult. But what we've got for the show here is pretty simple. It's a win-win. Which one would you pick? Would you rather have to wait 30 minutes for every beer you got, but they're free, or still pay for your beers but get them right away?
Ooh.
Thanks for the ahs and oohs.
That's right.
Harrison. This one's tough because, again, both of them have their pros and cons, as is the point of a good would you rather.
Right.
What are your initial thoughts? Wait 30 minutes and your beers are free, or still pay for your beers but get them when you need them most?
This almost comes down to beer style, and I wonder if you order the beer and the bar person pours it and then just stands there with it for 30 minutes staring at you as it gets warm in the room. That would be an angry bar just full of angry people.
Just a bunch of waiting cups.
That's not a good business model. But if it's the taps are a half a mile away from the bar and they just have to go and get it, great. That's something I'm thinking about right away, is what kind of weird MC Escher building is this that this bar is in, where the staircase goes to nowhere and you just can't get to me with the drink I ordered. And then good luck hiring new bartenders. And then, of course, the world we live in now is pay for your beer as you get them right away. Which I'm used
to.
Right. Although you're right. Sometimes if you're in a crowded happy hour in the middle of New York City, say, you may pay for your beer and wait 30 minutes and maybe still not get it. So that's the worst. I'm glad that's not an option. So again, I love the familiar, but every time we do one of these things, I think I'm going to go for the same beer every time or whatever it is. And then I start getting enticed by this fantasy world of free beer. And the word free gets bigger and bigger in my head.
You're nailing it. That's how can I live waiting 30 minutes for every beer?
Right. I just have to if that's the world I live in, then I just become a smarter version of myself, where I'm like, I'll have these 2 beers and then
nope.
That wouldn't work. All right,
that one beer at a time, sir.
So you
can't order your next until you finish your first. It must be difficult.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. Well, I'm just getting a liter of beer at a time.
It's almost the same as not being able to get drunk. You'd have to order 3 Ivans back to back.
Right. Or I just have to become really good at multiple disguises, where the bar person leaves, I put on my glasses with the nose.
Child.
Right. And then Harrison's in the bathroom. I'm Garrison, and I would like a beer as well. I put on a hat the next time, or a beret or something. I always have a fake beard in my pocket, or a fake face. Yeah, you can get really Mission Impossible with it. Just be making masks you carry around yourself. That's a lot of work but it's free beer. It's tough to pick, John. Really, I think, again, a lot of factors at play here. I think I'm going for pay for your beers and get them right away. I'm just going to live in the world I'm ill. And actually, you're right. It's like an augmented version of now. That, to me, that get them right away is I slap the money down on the bar and
it's a better version of today.
It goes wham. Someone just right there with an ice cold, icy beverage. I'm going for that. That's the future I want to live in.
There are definitely economics involved, and I am not an economist. But many people, including, I think, Joe Pesci, have said time is money. So if it takes me 30 minutes to get a beer, then that's 30 minutes of money I spent already waiting for a free beer.
30 minutes of you making money doing something else. If you can order a beer and then go and
open an Etsy page.
Right.
Okay.
Right, do something.
I think if we're talking about Dark Lord 2016 Marshmallow Hanji, I'll wait for that one.
Yeah.
But if you gave me the option to pay for my beers and get them right away, I think that it's the world I generally try to live in.
When we fight to live in. Exactly.
When you go, sometimes there's a beer release, or you go to that trivia night, and it's going to take 20 minutes anyway, which is totally fine.
Sure.
But if there was a way that I could pay for my beers and get them right away, Oh man,
Perfect.
I'm 100. It's like the fast path of life.
That's right. That's what you want to. That's what you want to be doing. I wonder if, like, although at the same time, if I go to a bar and I like order some food and beer, and the food gets there right away, and then my first beer gets there. I mean, 30 minutes is a long time, though. I think I'm still. Oh yeah, I'm paying for my beer as I go.
You make a good point. I have a hard time understanding if 30 minutes is a long time or a short time.
Right.
It depends. Is it 30 minutes on Monday morning at work, or is it 30 minutes on Saturday afternoon?
Right. It's different. You're different. It's different.
Either way, I'm happy I live in a world where I can expect to get my beers. I hate that I have to pay for them all, but
right. Yeah, again, there's that word free, just sitting there,
true,
dancing around, enticing you into warm old beer for free. Yeah, I'm going to pay for it. But it's good to think about it. Who knows? Who knows what happens next?
I mean, that's basically my childhood, was taking old, warm Milwaukee's from my grandpa's refrigerator and carrying them in a backpack on my bicycle to the woods to drink them and thinking the beer was terrible.
You've already done this. I guess we all had the 30 minutes. I did this and steal it and put it under the couch until someone was away and then quickly pull it out and drink it. So I was doing the free 30-minute beer that was shooken up and warm. I've done that already. I'm graduating to using some cold hard cash to get some cold tasty brews.
This might be the easiest would you rather we've done.
Yeah, but it's
It still involves thought. We'll probably post it in the Facebook group to get a more educated opinion from the masses.
I want to hear more about the world of what takes 30 minutes to get the beer. I want everyone's description of that moonscape. Some poor person living off tips is running through to grab the beer from the back of the whatever we're in, cave, maze. I don't know where she's going, but
true. I would still tip even if the beer was free.
Right,
so there's no such thing as a free beer.
They came back having to solve a riddle from a centaur in a maze to get your beer, and that's why it took 30 minutes. What was the riddle?
Congratulations if you've made it this far. This will be the end of season 3, episode 4.
That's right.
Join us in the Facebook group to share in an ongoing conversation between Harrison and I and a whole bunch of people that use Untappd better than the both of us.
That's right.
In the meantime, show notes are going to be available at podcast.untappd.com and mostly available on YouTube and Spotify, et cetera, et cetera. If you love the show and you want to get access to the episode a little bit early, subscribe to us on our YouTube channel. We'll usually post the episodes a few hours early over there.
Yeah, pro tip.
If you have any questions or feedback, you can connect directly with Untappd on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. Send a message, use the hashtag Drinking Socially, or connect with us at the Drinking Socially Facebook group.
And we will see you in 2 weeks.
Nostrovia.
Yeah, Nostrovia.